This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What's up, Detroit sports fans? Welcome to the Fan Reporter Show, made by fans for fans, powered by the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I'm Nick, and coming at us from his own home is our boy Andrew's going to give us this week's topics.
The NBA season is back. We'll go through the details and what it means for the Pistons. Then comes the meat and potatoes of today's show, where we'll try to agree on a ranking of the 10 best teams in Detroit sports history. It's the Fan Report.
All right. Well, that was a real quick and short intro this time. We were down to business with that one.
Oh, yeah.
No screw-ups, nothing. Just, getting down to business with it, getting right into it.
So it took us one take, technically.
Yeah. Wow, that's probably a first. So as he mentioned, we're going to start off talking a little bit of basketball before we get into what I like to call the fun part. He called it the meat and potatoes, which, in all honesty, is kind of my favorite part of the meal anyways. At least the meat. But so we're gonna start with a little bit of business.
Sloppy potatoes, though.
Yeah. We're going to start with a little bit of business here. So, Andrew, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah. So the Board of Governors has officially agreed on a return for the NBA season. And it looks like the NBA season should be back, assuming no unforeseen circumstances come into play by July 31st is when they're looking at. And it's going to come back with 22 teams in Orlando. So that's going to be 8 teams per conference, plus an additional 6 teams that are currently 6 games or fewer behind the 8th seed in their respective conference. First of all, before we get any further, Nick, do you agree with bringing back 22 teams?
I don't have a problem with the 22 team aspect. I more have a problem with allowing teams that were 6 games out of the playoffs
to be allowed a little much, right?
I mean, what? They had 15 games left in the regular season? And nobody's catching up. Nobody's making up 6 games in 15. I'm sorry. You're just not doing that unless there's an astronomical tank job done by the 8th seed or 7th seed or somebody else.
Yeah.
You're not going to see someone make up 6 games. So I have an issue with that aspect of it, but I think 22 is a solid number. I think the bottom 8 teams in the NBA were definitely out of it. I think those are by far the most clearly out of it teams. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to see how they structure the lottery as a result.
Mm-hmm. We'll get to the lottery too.
Okay. Has that already been declared? I have not seen that. Oh, it has.
Lottery is rescheduled for the 25th. Yeah. We'll get to the lottery in a second. But the season restart is going to it's going to be 8 what they're calling seeding games. So for each returning team, including the possibility of a play-in tournament. Now, the play-in tournament is going to come into play if a team it's for teams that are within 4 games. If a team is within 4 games of the 8th seed, then they'll have a best of 3 series between the 8th seed and the 9th seed. That's how the play-in tournament will work. But other than that, the 8 games that they're playing are going to be based on what the schedule was before the season was suspended, and they are going to play, I guess, the next 8 games, from what I understand. And then the team, and that will obviously affect your playoff seeding, but where the play-in tournament comes into play is if one of those bubble teams can get within 4 games of the 8th seed.
I'm curious to see how it works out if they're doing it based on their schedule, because obviously some of those teams would have had an easier schedule than others. They would have been playing bad teams towards the end of their season. Some of the teams that probably aren't playing, so I'm curious how they're going to do that. I'd almost want them to do more of like a round robin style, like what they do with the FIFA World Cup. If they've got that many teams, set up kind of a round robin style, maybe give the top 2 teams a bye and do 5-4 round or 4 team brackets or something like that. Or 4 or 5 team brackets, and then go from there and develop your top seeds that way. Pick 2 teams from each grouping, I guess, and have them all play each other twice in their own group and go from there. Or I don't know. I don't have a perfect format for a 22 team situation. Yeah. Again, like I said, I think 22 is slightly too much, just because I don't think teams that are all the way 6 games back should really be involved in a postseason situation. Mm-hmm. But either way, that's what we got. I don't know how I feel about this early qualifying thing. I like the play-in tournament thing. I think that's kind of cool. It's different. I like that they're being creative and willing to be flexible with this. So I'm curious to see how this all pans out, especially with no fans. I think that's going to play a big factor in this that it wouldn't have prior, obviously. So I am curious. Go ahead.
No, because here's where it's getting where it gets interesting is because about the seeding is okay. Like I said, it's 6 teams that are. It's like they basically consider 6 bubble teams, and again, you have to go within 4 games. So I was looking at the conference standings, and basically how they chose it is there's only one bubble team from the East, and that's Washington Wizards. They're the 9th seed. They were 5.5 games behind.
Well, the East is
on
garbage,
March 11th when the season was suspended. So chances that they get within. I mean, they could, I guess, go within 4 games to the Magic, but that's if. So, I'm curious: is John Wall coming back to play? Like, I don't know.
Now, I haven't
much faith in it.
Now, I
definitely think it will come into play in the Western Conference because you have the Blazers who are 3.5 games out, Pelicans and Kings as well are 3.5 games out. The Suns are 4 games out, and they also had the Spurs are 4 games out. And they also included the Suns in the conversation, or 6 games out.
Now, I haven't really paid
9 through 12 would be interesting for the West.
Yeah, no. Now, I haven't really deep dived too much into this to really get a full structure. But are they really keeping it still East versus West?
Yes.
So you have 9 Eastern Conference teams and 13 Western Conference teams.
Correct.
And you still only get 8
by the time
from
the
each.
Playoffs. Yeah, because the reason is because they remember they included the teams that were outside of that 16-team playoff field. The requirement was you had to be within 6 games of the 8th seed. Only one team in the East was within 6 games of the 8th seed, while there were 5 teams in the West that were within 6 games.
I don't like this. Frankly, in my opinion, take this top 16 teams and move on. That's what I do. I would once take your 22. Take your 22, have them battle out the rest of the way, whatever, and then take out of those 22, take your best 16. Don't worry about East versus West anymore.
You don't want. Oh, so okay. I thought you were saying you don't want the play-in games.
No. Out of the 22, you play out the rest of the season, and then you eliminate the conference aspect. You just take your top 16 teams at that point. I think if you're going to come back with a shortened with a lesser
the Wizards
scenario,
would be last place,
right? Which is
all
where they
all the
be.
Western Conference bubble teams are ahead of the Wizards.
If I were one of those Western Conference bubble teams, I was coming back in a situation where we don't have 30 NBA teams playing, I'd be kind of pissed if I was one of those Western Conference teams, especially if the rest of the year I was playing. If I had a couple of games going up against one of the 8 teams that got eliminated. If I had games going up against it, or if I'm a 7 or 8 seed in my conference and I had an easy schedule for the rest of the year, and now all of a sudden I have a tough schedule for the rest of the year, I'd be kind of pissed.
Based off the games they're selecting are based off their remaining games. I don't know which remaining games they're taking, but
you're not playing a team that only had 18 wins. You're playing a team that now probably has 30 or 40 wins. Your schedule automatically gets harder.
Yeah, you are correct because like teams like the Pistons or the Warriors or
teams would have played the Warriors, the Pistons, the Hawks, the terrible teams in the league that could have helped them jump up the standings a little bit, but now because they're now having to face a tougher schedule by default, it screws them. So
you bring up a good point that if you wanted to do like an 8-game seeding stretch, that it's kind of pointless if you're not going to have all the teams in it to actually have fair seeding if you're going to continue the schedule.
Exactly. If you're going to continue the schedule the way it was and now just plug and play games from different teams that are no longer playing. So you're taking teams that are playing and putting them in the spots where teams weren't playing. I'd be kind of pissed because now my schedule automatically gets tougher. Sure, it's great to be back and have basketball, but I now have a lesser chance of coming back and making a play for the playoffs, especially considering it's going to be more competitive in the West than the East. The Wizards, why are they even playing at this point? They don't have a shot. Are they really going to get within the 4 games of the Eastern Conference of the 8th seed? Probably not.
Unlikely.
But again, I don't know what
considering the only teams that they'll be playing, they're literally the worst team playing. So every team they're going to be playing is better than them.
Right.
Record-wise.
So I don't see why a team like that would even be involved in. I don't know what each team's schedule looked like before the lockdown. Yeah, I have no idea. So frankly, but what if you were a team that was, 2 games back from the 8th seed and your schedule involved with 15 remaining, you had 6 games against teams that are now no longer playing, or 7 games against teams that are now no longer playing. If I were that team, I'd be pretty pissed. because I could have guaranteed myself a spot almost guaranteed, and just played good basketball for the rest of the year and guaranteed myself a spot in the playoffs. And now all of a sudden I now have to face teams that are far more difficult than what I would have played. And guess what? We're probably going to miss the playoffs because of it. That's shitty. Yeah. Like I'd be pretty pissed off if I was one of those teams. I think those teams are getting screwed. Sure, it doesn't affect the teams at the top. Let's be honest, it doesn't. But unless you're talking seeding, maybe someone catches a 1 or a 2 seed when they would have had an easy schedule. And you could make the argument that could affect a 3 or 4 seed just as much because of the fact that, hey, you had 6-7 games against teams that were bottom barrel for the rest of the year, and all of a sudden you don't, and you're not able to jump up the standings, and you're probably going to fall down the standings now as a result.
Yeah.
So I think it really kind of screws up the seeding. If you're going to play this route, I would rather get rid of the conference aspects. There's no East and West anymore. We're playing in Orlando and only in Orlando. So there's no East West. It's 22 NBA teams that are left playing. Take your top 16 teams after a certain amount of teams, after your bottom 20 teams of these 22. So leave the top 2 out. Take your 20 teams and play a round robin style situation to get your top 16 and move on. That's what I would do personally.
Now that you bring it up, this was actually a perfect opportunity to test out the doing away with conferences and seeding aspect.
Absolutely. It's East versus... There's no East versus West. We're all playing in Orlando now. So there's no conferences anymore. There's no home court advantage, nothing. The only team that may have home court, sort of, is the Orlando Magic, and they don't have the fans, so it doesn't even matter. It's just home.
Now, the finals are expected to end no later than October 12th in terms of scheduling. And then the NBA's regular season for 2020-2021 is set to start December 1st, 2020. Now I don't know. I've been trying to look. I'm still not sure if they are compressing the games in for 2020-2021 and still doing 82 games just in a compressed schedule, or if they're having a shortened season for next season also. I'm not sure. I haven't been able to find that anywhere.
I don't know that they have that decision yet, and if they do, I haven't seen it. I would prefer them go shortened schedule as opposed to compressing 82 games in that format. Or honestly, I wouldn't even hate the idea of them.
It's dangerous for players.
It's not only dangerous for players. I don't think you get the best product. I think you oversaturate your media markets as well.
Yeah,
and also
have a lot of teams resting players.
Right. And I also would prefer to see if they were hell-bent on playing 82 games, I'd rather see them push the next season out further, playing into maybe August as opposed to keeping the end date where it's supposed to be. I'd say play further into July, August, whatever, and have it end then, as opposed to playing your 82 games in a compressed scenario. That I think that would be
and just have a shortened off season again.
And just have a shortened off season again, right? You'd see teams resting players early on in the season, that's so be it. I mean, it is what it is. It's an unprecedented scenario that we've all had to deal with, and we're gonna have to adjust. So we're going to have to do it one way or the other. My leading option is still playing maybe a 60-game season as opposed to an 82-game season and going that route. I would prefer to see that over a shortened offseason next year so players aren't able to get as healthy and it affects the following season. I think you'd have the lowest amount of impact for years to come by just taking 22 games off of next season and starting at December 1st and moving on. And just accepting what it is.
I agree. Let's move on to the teams like the Pistons, who were headed for the lottery. And like the Pistons were very, very close to getting the number 2 pick, or putting themselves in position for the number 2 pick. So the 14 NBA lottery teams would be the 8 teams that did not get into this seeding schedule. So the 8 teams left out of the 22. And then the 6 teams that are playing but did not qualify, but don't end up qualifying for the playoffs. Now, the lottery is going to be August 25th, which gives the Pistons, and then the draft on October 15th, which gives Pistons quite a bit of time to prepare. But now, the seeding in the lottery and assigned odds is going to be based on the records of the games through March 11th when the season was suspended. And then the rest of the seeding after that, for the lottery, I should say, the rest of the order is going to be determined by the record of the 16 playoff teams. Then it's going to include their seeding games. So it's a regular season record plus their record in the seeding games. So for some of the teams, seeding is not factored, aka the bottom 8 teams. And then for the rest of the team, seeding is factored.
See, I don't like this idea either. And the reason is because if you're going to include the final X amount of games for the teams that are still playing, then why are you not? Then if you're going to include one, why not include the other? You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense to do it that way if you're going to do it. I know that they're playing basketball and that things are different now for those teams, but things are not necessarily different for some of the other teams. Like the Pistons are going to be bad no matter what, and they had a chance and they were getting worse and worse and had a chance to move their draft lottery potential up and move up in the pecking order to get that pick. So it kind of screws a team like that. You could take a look at a team like the Wizards, or not the Wizards, or let's take the 10 seed in the West, for example. I don't exactly know who it is, probably the Pelicans or someone. What if they said, all right, we don't want to even try for it and we just want to tank out, or they just play terribly because they're rusty and they tank to the bottom of that, to the bottom of the top 22. So they're now letting the lottery at number 9. Why would they get the advantage of moving up in the draft, but a team like the Pistons would not, who was heading in that direction already?
Yeah.
So if you're going to have the impact of this play-in situation, of these seeding tournament, quote unquote, affect one side of the coin, then you have to have some kind of effect on the other side of the coin. Maybe you have a seeding tournament for. Here's what I would. It
sucks for Pistons fans because we were legit half a game out of the second.
Right.
Here's what I would do. Lottery odds.
Here's what I would do. I would have 2 tournaments. If you're hell bent on having the 22 team tournament, I'd have an 18 tournament. Except I would not order it where the bottom team gets the top spot. I would have it be the top team gets the number 1 lottery odds. So they're actually playing. That'd be
so funny though. A tournament of let's try not to win this tournament.
Right. That's what I mean. Right. That's what I mean. I would have an 18 tournament in Orlando that would give you, based on how you finish, is where your lottery spot would be. And it would have
all the teams suck. It's except for the war. Like the reason I'm okay with it is because the Warriors, who do have the top pick, really don't need the top pick. So it's not like you're screwing over a team that really needs. I
would in the Warriors situation, I would consider Adam Silver would have to step in and say that players like Klay Thompson and players who were on injured reserve to begin once the lockdown began are not able to play in the tournament. I would have to say that they would not be allowed to play in that tournament.
Let's rig it for the Pistons. Let's do it.
Right. No, I don't think that's rigging it because those types of players were on IR and were not going to play this season. So if that's the case, they shouldn't play in any kind of play-in tournament like this. So, but that's what I would do. I would do 2 tournaments and determine your lottery, your top 8 spots that way. Because if you're going to have one side of the coin affect your draft lottery rankings, then the other one should as well. So that's what I would do personally. But I'm curious to hear your idea and your thoughts on what you would do, or if you're fine with it the way it is.
I agree. It's kind of weird to have different factors at play for different teams and giving different teams an opportunity to either move up or down the lottery while other teams are locked in. So I do agree that it is kind of weird, and even with the 16 playoff teams, like they even get a shot to improve their lottery chances based on how poorly they do in the playoffs. Well, not lottery, but draft order chances. So I do get it. And when I think of 22 teams, I was saying that before. I was saying that teams like the Pistons, like the bottom lottery team, shouldn't need to play. Like they're not going to make the playoffs. But I also wasn't expecting a whole 22 teams to be playing either.
I said 3 games out. If you're not 3 games out, see ya.
Here's what I didn't expect a seeding schedule. I didn't expect that. So I didn't expect like an 8-game regular season to be in effect. And like if you're going to do that, you already have the majority of your teams playing. You may as well just get the rest in there. That way, it's at least a fair schedule. They can just go off what their remaining schedule was going to be, and you get fair seeding in terms of playoffs, as well as fair seeding in terms of the lottery.
Right. Frankly, I don't agree with the. Based on the fact of the matter is that just conferences just don't matter anymore. Let's be real.
Yeah, and that part.
So they don't matter. It's a pandemic. We're playing in Orlando. So frankly, I would have just taken the top 20 teams, had your bottom 8 teams play in some type of play-in scenario where you have maybe a 5-game series between your 7 seed and 10 seed. And then your 8 seed and 9 seed. And then the winner of that would go on and move on into the rest of the playoffs, and then you continue your 7-game series from there on out. That's what I would have done. And just done it 1 through 20, no conferences, nothing. So the Wizards would have been out, and you would have had 12 teams from the West and 8 teams from the East, and that's just what it would have been. So that way, I feel like you would have definitely gotten the best teams in this situation. You'd be able to crown the number 1 champion. The teams that deserve to be in the playoffs were going to be in the playoffs. And then from there on out, the final 10 teams, you either give them equal odds or you do a different tournament of your own, or you base it on their end of the year schedule. Yeah. Or not end of the year schedule, your end of once things went into lockdown, you base on the record at the end of that to determine your lottery spot. And that's just how it is. And then your top 20 teams would not be able to move up in the pecking order in terms of the draft lottery. They'd just be where they are. You'd have a 10-team lottery at that point, and I'd be good with that.
Yeah. I mean, again, nitpicks aside, does it suck that the Pistons are going to wind up with the 5th pick now? Yeah. But I'll be honest, I'm happy that basketball is coming back.
I am too. It'll be nice to see playoff basketball. I am very curious to see how it's going to look without fans in just a gym.
Yeah. It's going to be weird.
Did you hear that
story about they might funnel in 2K crowd noise?
Yes. Well, actually, I mean, I don't think they'll do 2K crowd noise.
No, they said legitimately 2K.
No, I know.
That was according to Shams, I think?
I know. I don't think that's like a realistic option. I think that's more of a hee type situation. But now, mind you, I believe it's Bundesliga did this. They did pipe in crowd noise for the broadcast, not necessarily the players. So the players can't hear anything but the game going on, the refs, the other players talking. But when you watch the games on TV, you can hear crowd noise as if a real crowd is there.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if they do that for the NBA Finals, or not for the NBA Finals, but for the rest of the basketball season, just see how it goes. Yeah. Obviously, they can't necessarily. I think what they're going to do is they're going to try it without crowd noise to begin with, and then they're going to hear some things that are not so, some colorful things from the players that are not so PG,
exactly.
And they're going to have to drown that out. So I think that's what's going to happen. I think we will get crowd noise. I don't know about 2K crowd noise. I think that's, whatever, but I think we will get crowd noise on the broadcast so that we don't hear things like, a couple of F you, F this, F that, stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel you. All right, ready to move on to the, as I called it, the meat and potatoes of the show?
Yeah, always ready. I love doing top 10 lists. I'm not going to lie. We get them all the time on the show, and I love doing them. They're a lot of fun. There's a lot of debate.
Yeah, we used to do a lot of movie ones, but now we're doing some sports ones.
We are doing some sports ones. We did a couple sports ones every now and then.
Yeah, every now and then.
But here we go. So, obviously, as Andrew mentioned at the beginning of the show in the intro, we are doing a top 10 Detroit sports season. So basically we're taking the 10 best that we think, obviously this is our opinion, seasons and individual seasons, not by player, but by team.
Yes.
Since 1980. So the 68 Tigers, the 50s Wings, the 50s Lions, they don't count. So this is not since 1980. The top 10 seasons since the 1980s. So we're going...
Well, not just seasons, but also playoffs included.
And playoffs included, and, obviously a championship will play a factor. So just kind of give you an idea of what plays a factor into where we rank these. Things like how many All-Stars, how many All-Pros, how many... did you win or not win a championship? What's your win-loss record? How'd you do in the playoffs? Did you have any insane seasons by specific players? So it's just kind of an all-around thing to determine who is our top 10 in this list here. So I say we start off with some honorable mentions.
Well, I say we start off with our pool.
Okay, we can start with the pool. So we have, 16 teams?
17, I believe.
Was it 17? I have 4, 1, 5, 11.
I got 17 on mine.
17. I have 17 on mine as well. Okay. So we'll start with the Lions because they have one option.
Only one.
And technically speaking, we could have done a couple others here. We could have done
some of the teams that made the playoffs, but
like the 2011 Lions or the 2014 Lions. But I'll be honest with you,
lower the criteria for them. Is what we'd
I'll be honest with you, they wouldn't have had a chance.
Yeah.
So we have the 1991 Detroit Lions. That's the only Lions representative we have potentially in the pool. Going up to the Tigers, we have the 1984 Tigers, the 2005, 2006 Tigers, 2006 Tigers, not 2005, 2006, just 2006 Tigers. We have the 2011 Tigers team, and then we have the 2013 Tigers team. Andrew, give us our Pistons teams.
Yep. Starting off with the 3 championship teams, you got the 89 Pistons, the 90 Pistons, and the 04 Pistons. Rounding out the bad boys teams, you also have the 88 Pistons that lost in Game 7 to the Lakers off that phantom foul from Kareem. And then you also have the 2005 going to work Pistons that lost in Game 7 to the Spurs, as well as the 2006 Pistons, who lost in the conference finals, but they also achieved the best record in Pistons history at 64 wins.
Now, that was the team that lost to the Miami Heat, the D-Wade Shaq Miami Heat team in the conference finals. So the Red Wings teams, we've got the 96-97 Stanley Cup champs, 97-98 back-to-back Stanley Cup champs. We've got the 01-02 Stanley Cup champs, the 2008 Stanley Cup champs, the 2009 Wings that lost in the Stanley Cup finals. And then we've got the 95-96 Red Wings that lost in the Western Conference finals as well. So that is our pool. We've got 17 teams. So we've got to make 7 eliminations here.
Yes.
So do we want to talk about teams that we are just outright eliminating immediately and just throw them out? Okay. So the first team I'm eliminating, and I hate to say it because it's the only representative, but it's the 1991 Lions.
That was my first.
Figured I would just get them out of the way.
That was my first elimination too.
It's the only one. It's the only playoff win since 1990, whatever, since 1957. They won 12 games. They lost in the NFC Championship, but man, did they ever get trounced in the NFC Championship.
Yeah.
And I know they had 6 All-Pros and 5 Pro Bowlers with Lomas Brown, not Morris Claiborne. Oh my gosh. I can't remember his name, but Barry Sanders, names like that. But I know Barry Sanders rushed for 1,500 yards, but I just don't equate this team as being one of the most dominant ever in terms of top 10 for not just the Chris Spielman's the player I was thinking of, by the way. Top 10 in terms of Detroit sports seasons. It was a good season, great season, arguably the best season for the Lions in 60 years. It just wasn't up there for me. So that's my first elimination.
My first elimination, I'm going to go with another team that didn't quite make their respective championship series. I'm going to go with the 2013 Tigers that lost in the ALCS. And it's a hard one for me because that was Miggy's Triple Crown year.
I believe it was his Triple Crown year. I can't remember if it was his Triple Crown year.
I think it was.
It was his back-to-back MVP year. I know that.
And we had one hell of a bullpen that year too with Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer.
Starting rotation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Bullpen's the relievers.
See, this is how well versed I am in baseball. But no, it was on paper.
2012 was his Triple Crown year.
Oh, okay. Well, you had prime Miggy. You had a slugger in Prince Fielder. You had great pitchers. On paper, it was a fantastic team, but
you had, if I recall, 1, 2, 3, 4 pitchers that have won Cy Youngs. 3 pitchers I can guarantee. You had Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, which this was Max Scherzer's Cy Young year. You had Doug Fister in his prime, Anibal Sanchez, I believe, in his prime, and then Rick Porcello at the age of 24, who really came into his own once he moved to the Red Sox. But still, I agree with you on this one. This was going to be my next pick as well. You had Scherzer win the AL Cy Young. You had Miguel Cabrera win his second of back-to-back MVPs, and then you had a 93-win Tiger team here.
Yeah, I think that part of the knocks is at 93 wins that was what, 4th, 5th best in the league that season.
I think
they weren't even
the top.
Yeah, I think if they were in the top 5, then they were 5 in terms of wins that year.
You only had a certain amount of teams. I think you only had 5 teams getting to the playoffs for each conference that year.
So you had the A's that had a better record than him. You had the Red Sox. You had the Braves.
No, that was first place in their division.
The Cardinals and Pirates. I'm saying record-wise, you had 5 teams that are
conference. Oh, you're talking MLB-wise?
Yeah, just total MLB record. At 93 and 69, that was the 6th best record that year.
Okay, yeah, yes.
That was another thing that was factoring in there, but...
Yes, so just in the American League, they were... Oh, I'm looking at the wrong season. Hang on. They were...
3rd, I believe. They were 3rd.
They were 6th in Major League, so yeah, that's one that I would say definitely is further down the pecking order. My next elimination. I went with, and this one is controversial, but I went with the 2009 Detroit Red Wings. Now, this is a team that won 112 points in the regular season. They, I believe, were second in their conference, if I remember right. I could be wrong on that. But they lost in the Stanley Cup Finals. This would have been back-to-back cups for the Wings, but they lost in Game 7 to the Penguins. This was a heartbreaker. This is where Detroit fans really started to hate Sidney Crosby. But you didn't win the cup. I don't think you won the President's Trophy that year either. Those two factors right there were enough for me to eliminate them and say that was it. So that was the next elimination that I gave to this list. So go ahead and continue.
All right. This next elimination is actually very hard for me to make because I loved this team. I'm taking out the 05 Pistons.
Really?
So this team was very close to a repeat championship. They made the finals. They lost in Game 7 to Spurs. Robert Horry, okay. Anyway, but this is the first. This is the next iteration of the Golden Road Crew after they won the 04 championship. And they added Antonio McDyess, got rid of Memo Core. This was still a very, very solid squad. They did have their ups and downs in the regular season. They did barely escape the conference finals with Miami. It's a very tough elimination for me. I don't see him making it in the top 10 on this list.
I agree with you, actually. This team won 54 games, so it wasn't like they had this insane season. They won as many games they did when they won the title in 04. Yeah. So they ended up losing because of Big Shot Bob basically putting a stake in them. This is a team that I would just say is up there, very good, and this is where the eliminations start to get hard, but I think this is where we pump the brakes and say, all right, this team doesn't deserve to be in the top 10. Yeah. My next elimination, and again, this is where things start to get very, very difficult. So we've eliminated, 3 teams now or 4 teams now?
4.
4?
91 Lions eliminated, 05 Pistons, 09 Wings, 13 Tigers.
So we've got 3 more to eliminate. Why does this not seem right to me? Hang on.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I'm going through my list and trying to find everybody that I've got.
I'm curious to see who you go next. We all 5 teams that we actually no, sorry.
So I messed something up.
2 teams that we have left lost in the World Series, aka the Tigers.
I messed something up.
We do have another team that lost in the finals. And then we have 2 teams that lost in the conference finals. What did you mess up, Nicholas?
I forgot to include a team in my list.
And we have 8 teams that won championships.
Yes, we do have 8 teams that won championships and 2 that did not. So let's go ahead.
Are you ready to make your pick?
Yes, it is going to be the 1987 to 88 Detroit Pistons, the Phantom Foul team.
That was going to be my next pick. Very similar to the 05 Pistons, 54-28 record.
Yep.
Lost in Game 7, although this one I think is more egregious of a loss in terms of I really think they should have won this series. But this was before the Pistons were fully. Well, I'll let you take it. I haven't started talking.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, feel free to add on to this because you pretty much said everything I was going to say. The Phantom Foul team did screw them. They probably would have won back to back to back. However, outside of that right there that they made the NBA Finals, that was really the only. Basically, we're saying is to be in the top 10 list without a championship, you had to have had a very wildly noteworthy season. I'm talking maybe team record.
And I guess that goes to how well Detroit sports have done over the last 40 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So I eliminate that 87-88 Pistons teams just based on that.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Andrew, take it away.
The other argument I'd have there is this was before I would say the Bad Boys were fully formed.
Right.
They still had Adrian Dantley on their team, and there was chemistry issues with Adrian Dantley there.
Right.
And I love Adrian Dantley. I still think that team was good enough to win a championship, but the team undoubtedly got better when Mark Aguirre got to town. So
you've got 2 more to eliminate. I've got my 2. I've got 3 teams that I'm struggling with here. I'm not going to lie. Let me preface this by saying, again, I've never been a huge baseball fan. This was the first season where I remember getting truly invested in the Detroit Tigers. So this is a team I hold near and dear to my heart.
That is the '06 Tigers that lost in the World Series. That's a team of Maglio Ordonez, who was my Tiger. Guys.
Singlio Ordonez. Dude was known for hitting his singles. He hit the hell out of them. Honestly, though, I had one of the most iconic home runs in my lifetime against the Oakland Athletics. I believe it was to send us to the World Series. This '06 Tigers team was honestly such a comeback. Not just for the Tigers, you know.
I used to love this squad,
but this organization as a whole, and honestly, the city, because the city back then, if you remember right, it was not good. Things were not great in the city of Detroit, and then this Tigers team really lifted up a town that was struggling very much. And I know the Pistons were very good, and they had just won a title, but Pistons played in Auburn Hills. There was a disconnect.
And the Wings were really good. It was a great. In terms of sports,
it was a great era in Detroit sports.
Like 2006. Was a really good. I mean, you know, we didn't come out of the championship that year. That was where we had 3 championship contending teams.
Right. There was a few years you could argue. I believe '08 was a really good one outside of the Lions. I believe that was their own 16 year. But '04 was a solid year outside of the Tigers and the Lions. We had quite a few good years in those. Early to mid 2000s that were real solid. But I'll agree with you on the 2006 Tigers. My next pick here is the 2011 Tigers.
Okay.
A little bit of background on them. They lost in the World Series. That was the year they got swept by the San Francisco Giants when Pablo Sandoval decided he was going to turn from Kung Fu Panda to Extreme Kung Fu Panda and just hit the hell out of the ball. They had a 93-win season. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing. They had 5 All-Stars that season. I was looking at the wrong team, but they had 5 All-Stars. This is the year Justin Verlander won both the Cy Young and the MVP, winning the AL pitching triple crown. This is a fantastic year to watch. It was fun, but they just couldn't get it done in the end. So this was another team I put down as an elimination.
I find it interesting that we have our 10 right now, right?
Yes.
And we basically put our stake down and said championship or bust because every team that lost in the championship, we eliminated.
Yes. It's been championship or bust outside of 2. In all honesty,
like if you made it, if the teams that made it, we said championship or bust. If you made the finals or the World Series or the Stanley Cup, and you were off the list.
Right. Now it's basically a lot of the times though, because if the 2 teams that we have in here that didn't win a title. Now, mind you, I don't have them as 9 and 10. I have one of them up a little bit further than the other.
Yeah.
Further than some other things. But if you didn't win a title, this is a team that had title prospects that may be disappointed, but they had other noteworthy things happen in their season that they probably should have won a title. They just hit a brick wall, so to speak. So at number 10, this is where we may disagree. This is a team that I hold very near and dear to my heart. They had an incredible season. I believe it's actually a franchise record season.
If terms of the same team, yes, it would be franchise record.
In terms of wins, yes. In terms of wins.
And total wins in general.
Yes. This team was one that sent 4 players to the All-Star game. It is a team that, in terms of the All-Star game, gave me one of my favorite memories of an All-Star game, having all 4 of these guys on the playing surface at the same time.
On the court? Is that what you're looking for?
Well, I tried not to just give it away already, but yes, on the court at the same time. It is the 2006 Detroit Pistons.
Yeah.
This team...
I don't disagree.
This team had a 64-18 record, which is a franchise record. They had 4 All-Stars. They ended up losing to the Miami Heat in a 6-game series in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Heat did go on to win the NBA title, but it was obviously a very fun season. Was this Flip Saunders or Larry Brown?
Flip Saunders.
This was Flip's best
64-18 that year.
For sure.
Yes.
But definitely disappointed. That's why we have them at number 10. And honestly, if they had won the NBA title, they probably arguably be up in the top 5 here in my book. So
yes,
this
agreed.
team definitely is one I hold close, but because they didn't win that title, I have them down at number 10.
Well, yeah, they accomplished so much just during that season that it was hard not to keep them in there.
Right.
For me. But I agree. I agree at number 10 with that.
So at number 9, I'm assuming you put the other non-title team. I did not. I put a title team at number 9.
Interesting.
I did. It was a title team I think played above what they should have.
What's the title team you had at 9?
It's the 1989 Detroit Pistons.
Interesting.
Yes. The start of the Bad Boys, basically. The first Bad Boys, real Bad Boys year, the first title for the Bad Boys. They went 59-23, had 3 NBA All-Stars, and won an NBA title.
I'd be honest, I'd argue that I would keep the 89 over the 90 team.
90 team. Oh, sorry. I flip-flopped these. I do have the 1990 team. The 1990 team won 59 games. The 1989 team won 63. So I have the 1990 Pistons in this spot. I flip-flopped them here. They were a team that didn't have a ton of All-Stars. Or no, they had 3. Sorry, I lied. They won an NBA title, but I felt like they were the lesser of the 2 teams. Some people argue that otherwise, that the 90 team was better. I think the 89 team was better, and it was a back-to-back season, so you could argue that this was the expectation. They didn't exceed it. So I have the 1990 Pistons here at number 9, the Bad Boys.
Okay. See, my number 9 team was actually going to be the 97-98 Detroit Red Wings. But I don't disagree with putting the 90 Bad Boys there either. Like, it's nickels and dimes at this point. These are all fantastic teams. But yeah, my number 9 team was going to, but I will concede on the 90 Bad Boys. But yeah, I would say next in line may have to be the 98 Wings.
The 98 Wings at number 8, and I have really no issue with that. I'm not going to lie to you. I had them one spot higher with my team in between was the team I have. I'll switch to move up to number 7. But that 1998 Red Wings team did win their second of 2 titles in a row, the back-to-backs. They did have the 4-game sweep over the Washington Capitals. This season was one that honestly is looked less upon than the 97 season, and honestly maybe even the 96 season if it weren't for the fact that the 96 season was not a Stanley Cup title season. But that 98 season isn't as loved as much as endeared by Detroit fans as much as that 97 season, being the first Stanley Cup title they've had in many, many years. So I'll agree with you on the 98. I'll concede there. Moving on to number 7, I've got the second non-title team in our top 10. I've got the 1996 Detroit Red Wings team.
Okay.
Now, I have this team.
That was a fantastic team.
I have this team up here because they won 131 points, which, if you don't know, was the most in the NHL's most regular season points since the 1976-77 Montreal Canadiens. They won the President's Cup, but ended up losing in the Western Conference Finals to, I believe, the eventual champion in the Colorado Avalanche. I could be wrong on that. I can't remember if it was the Devils or the Avs that won that year. I'll quickly look that up.
It was the Avalanche.
It was the Avs that won it.
4-0.
Okay.
They won it in a sweep.
They did win in a sweep. The 94 Red Wings was the one that
only lost
in the Stanley
6
Cup
games
Finals.
that entire playoffs.
Oh no, they lost to the Florida Panthers in 4 games. It was a sweep. Yes. So that Panthers
they beat
season,
the Florida Panthers.
Right, they beat the Panthers. Yes.
Yeah.
So but you can also look at the 94-95 season for the Red Wings that went to the Stanley Cup Finals and lost to the Devils. That's another one that's a tough one.
I mean, you can make this whole list Red Wings teams if you wanted to.
You honestly really could. They've got a lot of history there.
Yeah.
But I still put that they did have the best regular season record that year and won the President's Trophy. However, I still put that 96 Wings team up just above that 95 team as well as the 98 team. Just based on their success throughout the season. And honestly, this season in particular really kind of started that Avalanche rivalry and made things go wild in terms of the fights and what really brought, I would argue, to be a golden age of hockey here in this town. So that 96 Wings team is one that I love very, very, very much. So that's my number 7. What's your number 6?
I'm going 97 Wings, and the reason I put them above the 98 Wings is just how fantastic they were down the stretch towards the end of the season and into the playoffs. They absolutely crushed the playoffs that year. I believe they only lost 4 games in the playoffs. They only lost 4 games. They swept the Flyers in the Stanley Cup final. I'm giving it to 97 Red Wings here.
That's actually exactly what I have as well. I have the 97 Red Wings here in my number 6 spot. That 97 Wings team was one that obviously fans here in the city hold near and dear to their hearts just because of the fact that it was the first title in a long time. It was the comeback team after losing the title, after losing in the finals in 95 and then not making it due to the loss against the Avs in 96. And then we finally got that redemption against the Colorado Avalanche in this 97 season to put us over the top. And then we ended up winning. This 97 team was one that definitely I have up there. So I like that 97 Wings team. And you're right. They did end that regular season and into the playoffs with just extreme success. And that definitely gives them the edge over that 98 team. So that's where I have that 97 Red Wings team. Now moving into the top 5. So go ahead and take it away here.
Oh, it's your turn.
Oh, it is my turn. Okay, I've got the 1989 Detroit Pistons.
Bad boys.
The Bad Boys team. Start off my top 5. Now, you may have them in your top 3. I do not, and that's personally because of personal preference and personally because of the team that I hold near and dear to my heart. I'm 27 years old. I'm not old enough to have watched this team. So I've got the 89 Pistons team here. I don't disagree with number 5, just looking at the 4 teams I have above them and the fact that, again, don't crucify me here, but the way they did it was controversial. Let's be honest here. It was.
The way they went about it was controversial. Us Detroiters love them, but
they obviously were the Detroit mentality.
Yeah.
They did have a 63-19 season. They were, one of the better teams in the league. They finished second in the Eastern Conference behind the Celtics, if I remember right. But either way,
I'll have to check that. I'm actually not 100% sure.
I think the Celtics.
I need to pull the rankings.
I believe they finished second to the Celtics that year. I could be wrong on that, but either way, they ended up winning the NBA title, really getting things in motion for the Bad Boys.
No, they won the East that year.
They won the East that year. Okay, then maybe it was 90 they placed second. Or 87, 88. I could be thinking of that year. Either way, they ended up winning the NBA title. The Bad Boys became a true moniker there.
They won the East by a mile that year.
Did they? Okay. You had the likes of Dennis Rodman, Joe Dumars, Isaiah Thomas. I believe Mark Aguirre was on that team as well. It was arguably one of the greatest Pistons teams in
not to mention the microwave, Rick Mahorn. Actually, no, Rick Mahorn left by then.
Yeah,
Rick Mahorn left by then.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
he was on the 88 team. He was on the 88 team.
I thought he was on the 89 team also, and then he left by the 90 team.
No.
Okay. Either way.
he left in the expansion draft.
Oh, okay, that's right. You're right. Either way, though.
Wrong. I'm wrong. I actually am wrong.
I thought so. I thought Rick Mahorn won an NBA title with the Pistons. I was going to say, and I don't think Vinnie Johnson was on that team, was he?
No, Vinnie Johnson definitely was.
Okay.
I thought Rick Mahorn had left in the expansion draft the year before they won the title.
Okay. But either way, this 89 Pistons team is obviously one that is a favorite of many fans. I just have it at number 5 because I wasn't old enough to see it.
I feel you.
Who do you got at number 4?
Oh, God, this is tough. I'm between 2.
I've got one clear one. It's the top 3 that I struggle with the most.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Then you might not be eliminating who I'm eliminating here, who I'm putting at 4 here. Sorry, because the 2 teams I'm choosing, although they don't have identical rosters, their success was almost identical. I'm just gonna lean towards the team that I wasn't watching as closely. I'll go with the O2 Wings.
O2 Wings?
Yeah.
You're an idiot. No, I'm kidding. You're not an idiot. But the O2 Wings may be the greatest team put together in the history of sports.
You're not wrong. That's why I said the only difference between the 2 teams, because looking at the 02 and 08, only difference is the roster. Like, they had almost identical success. You could argue the 02 Wings had a better roster. They had
the greatest team put together in the history of sports.
The reason I get the 08 team the edge is I was just more aware of it. I guess it's all.
I will have to overrule you on this. I hate to say it. I have the 08 Red Wings at my number 4 spot. They had multiple Hall of Famers, I believe 4, maybe 5. I could be wrong on that. I have to go back and recheck the roster. They did win the President's Trophy with 115 points and won the Stanley Cup in the first of back-to-back seasons where they played the Pittsburgh Penguins in the Cup Finals, and they ended up winning this one. But the edge definitely, in my opinion, goes to that 02 team. It was their championship to lose from beginning to end, and they won it. They really just, at certain parts, you could even argue, weren't challenged in that season, and that's why they only won 160, only put up 116 points. They just were.
You could really argue the only series they were even challenged in was the Colorado Avalanche series in the conference finals.
That 0-2 team is arguably the greatest team put together in the history of sports, but I have the 0-8 team here, which is one I hold near and dear, close to me. It is one that I love very much. It is one that I really got to enjoy as someone who's a little bit older. I wasn't as young, so I really did get to enjoy it as someone who's a little bit older. Watching guys like Henrik Zetterberg, Pavel Datsyuk, you had Nicholas Lidstrom in his captaincy there win that as well. So I love that 08 Red Wings team, but I just don't think they're quite as good as that 02 team. So I put the 08 Wings as my number 4.
Okay. I mean, I don't. Again, I was torn between the two, so I'm not gonna disagree.
I'll just say this: that it's gonna be a minute before I mention that 02. I was knowing how much you love your Tigers. I was thinking you had the 1984 Tigers as your number 1. That's what I was thinking. I will not spoil anything.
I will not. Okay, you won't spoil anything. So I'm gonna assume. So for me, I have the 02 and 08 Wings next to each other, so I have them 3 and 4. I'm going to assume you have the 04 Pistons at 3, though.
I do have the 04 Pistons at 3. Now, a lot of people would say that the 89 Pistons could be even higher than the 04 Pistons, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. I just feel like the 04 Pistons embodied something.
The way they played was so beautiful.
The way they played was beautiful. It was different. It was exciting. It was a lot of fun to watch. It just it really brought together a town, and there was a lot of impact with that 04 Pistons championship. That just was a level that just a feeling that I honestly, as a fan, hadn't felt of all sports teams, arguably, outside of maybe that 97 Wings team that I just hadn't felt before. And I was too young to really even experience that 97 team. So this 04 team was really the first championship outside of that 02 one with the Wings that I was truly able to experience and be a part of and be about. So I have this 04 Pistons team ahead of that 89 Pistons team just for that reason right there. And I put that 04 team at number 3, with my top 2 teams being the clear top 2 in my mind, just because of the level of success, the rosters, the coaching, as well as the fact that they won a title in terms of at least one of these teams, fairly easy fashion. So that is my top 3 through 10. I have the 04 Pistons at number 3. You probably have them at number 2.
I have a number 2. So we have the same top 3, just different order, it looks like.
Yes. At number 2, who do you have? And I'll tell you if I agree or not.
Well, I said Pistons. I have a number 2. Yeah.
Okay. Give your reasons for the Pistons. Go ahead.
So for me, this is actually my personal favorite Detroit team of all time, but I am conceding to the number 1 team and recognizing I do think this team, that the number 1 team, had a bigger impact on the city and was probably a better team as well. But sorry, my adapter fell.
You're fine.
But so for me, the 04 Pistons, again, it kind of brought it's a team that brought the Pistons out of this almost decade-long slump. And the team, I think it epitomized Detroit so perfectly because they were so blue-collar. They did it with no superstars. They didn't even have an all-star that year. Like
I thought they had one. I thought Ben made the all-star that year.
I don't think he did. I can check, but I do not believe he did. But anyway,
I'll check.
Either way, they had no superstars, and it was a team that no one thought was going to be able to do what they did. And the way they topped it off by demolishing that Lakers team so handedly, it was icing on the cake. It was the cherry on top, and it was just a perfect season in my mind.
They did have one all-star. It was Ben Wallace. He did go to the all-star game that year. And they also had another accolade, the youngest player to win an NBA championship.
Darko.
Yes. But so, and I agree with all those things with that 04 team. They definitely embodied the city of Detroit. That's why I have them up at number 3. But at number 2, and I agree with you in terms of, I more so have a 1 and 1A. Because I think both of these teams were extreme in their outright, in their own, their own world there. I just have a slight edge to one of them just because of roster that was there, just the roster makeup that they had. So my number 2 team is the 1984 Detroit Tigers. And yes, this one probably is the most, I'll call it, important championship to the city of Detroit, with everything that was going on in Detroit at the time. This one is a team that won 104 games, which is an unbelievable amount of games for a baseball team to win. They started the year 35-5, which is an unreal start. Willie Hernandez won the Cy Young Award and the AL MVP, much like Justin Verlander did in that 2011 year. It was just an incredible year all around, and the list of names that come from this team are just unreal in terms of Tram and Lou, Gibby, Jack Morris, Milt Wilcox. The list goes on and on.
Oh yeah.
But this team right here just embodied the city of Detroit and what we were about, and really kind of started the title town mentality that we had here in terms of what we expect for our sports teams and how proud we are of, and how proud and blue collar we are when it comes to our sports and really what it's about. So I more so have a 1 and 1A, and this would be my 1A. My number one though is a team obviously we mentioned before is the 2002 Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah.
Like I said, this is the team that I would consider to be the greatest team put together in the history of sports. And they did not disappoint.
History of sports.
In the history of sports. I put it up there with the Showtime Lakers. I put it up there with Murderers Row Yankees. In fact, I think this team had more Hall of Famers than Murderers Row Yankees did.
What about like 90s Bulls, for example?
90s Bulls had, was another one of those teams that's up there. I would put this up there as one of the greatest
2015
teams.
Warriors.
Sure. This is one of the greatest teams orchestrated and built in the history of sports. You could argue that even though they won a Stanley Cup, even though they won the President's Trophy, you can even argue that they still may even have underperformed a little bit, which is unbelievable. That's how good this roster was. They had 10 future Hall of Famers, 2 entire lines of players. It's like, imagine being on the other side of that. We got past their top line. We're fine. Oh, shit. We deal with another Hall of Fame line here. And I know one or two of those Hall of Famers were goalies. I get that. But either way, 10 Hall of Famers were on this roster. That's an unbelievable amount of Hall of Famers to have on one team. And I know this is due to the fact that the NHL didn't have a salary cap back then. And Mike Ilitch just said, here's a blank check. Go get me everything. Win me a title. And they did. But they won the President's Trophy with 116 points. They won the Stanley Cup. And just that. And they had, and not to mention, they had a Hall of Fame coach in Scotty Bowman. Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
They had this is, in my opinion, the greatest team ever put together in the history of Detroit sports and arguably all sports in general. I've never seen another team put together with 10 Hall of Famers in my lifetime across any sport. So, and I don't know that I will ever again because of salary caps. So this team right here was just unreal, unbelievable. And we are in all honesty, I don't think we will ever see another team like this ever again in sports, not just in Detroit, but in sports in general. The 84 Tigers is a team. The 84 Tigers is a team that you could strike lightning twice in the same spot and just have an all-around team with some top-tier talent be put together with what they had. A team like the 02 Red Wings will never be orchestrated ever again just because of the way finances are in sports now. It will never happen again. And that's why I have the 02 team as my number one.
You make quite the case.
I do. But that is our top 10. And just kind of going back through, we have the 06 Pistons, 1990 Pistons, 98 Red Wings, 96 Red Wings, 97 Red Wings, 1989 Pistons. And then in there, I had the 08 Wings. You had the 02. I had
I switched it.
You switched it. You went with the 04 Red Wings at number 4, then at number 3.
The 08 Red Wings at number 4. The 02 Wings at number 3 is right.
Right. And then I had the 04 Pistons, and at number 2, I had the 84 Tigers. You had the 84 Tigers at number 1, and I had the 02 Wings at number 1. You had the 04 Pistons at number 2. So pretty much in the same boat. We had the same teams in the top 10. The only places we disagreed on were in the top 5. And really the top 4. Top 3,
yeah.
Right. So
we had the exact same 4 through 10.
Right. So either way, though, I assume most fans would tend to agree with the teams we selected. They may order them differently. Yeah. But if you guys have any, if you guys disagree or want to make a case for one of your teams being in the top 10 or moving up in the top 10, feel free to hit us up on Twitter. Go ahead. But I do believe that is going to call it for us this week. We enjoyed doing this again.
Bit of a longer show.
It was. We will continue to do lists until basketball starts and hockey starts. And granted, who knows how much we're going to talk about, considering none of our teams are playing. But as we start moving on back into the swing of things with sports and with regular life, with the stay-at-home order being lifted, hopefully things start to go back to what we would have considered a norm before and to a new norm now. So, but thank you guys again for listening. We appreciate all of you. Follow us on Twitter at RealFanReport. Again, like we said, if you have any discrepancies with our list or arguments, feel free to hit us up there. Andrew, thank you for joining me as well.
Thank you, sir.
Have anything else to add?
No, that's everything.
All right. Well, thank you guys again. And thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast. As always, this has been the Fan Powers by fans.
For fans.
We'll catch you guys next week. Have a good one. Enjoy.
Peace.